All right. Yesterday, I did something fascinating. I joined a Spaces where there's the audio conversation, so it's just audio, on Twitter. And the topic was reparations. And a big percentage of the audience were black Americans, I assume, based on their profiles and what I could hear. And I'd never had the privilege, and I think it was a privilege actually, to be exposed to opinions that are so different from my own. It was actually it was like really good. It was really interesting. Just to hear somebody who's so different in opinion. And I didn't catch it all, so there may be some nuances I missed, so I don't want to characterize the whole thing. But there was a pattern that I noticed. And it goes like this. People in favor of reparations didn't understand how economics work, and would speak in public as if they did, which tells you how deeply their lack of understanding of economics is. Now, I want to make sure that we don't drift into racist territory here, because you do know that the black community in America is very vocal about we need more economics training, personal finance and economics. You've heard that, right? That's a real thing. And that is a real, in my opinion, that's a sign of systemic racism, meaning just the system, not with any intention, but sometimes the system just gets you into a situation that nobody intended. And one of those is, I believe that white people in general, this is not true of all people, nothing's true of all people, I think white people sort of pick it up by osmosis. Like you just pick up economics just by hanging around it. Is that true? And I'll give you a specific example. And I didn't realize that I'd gotten an entire economics lesson as a child until I saw somebody else on Twitter mention that his mother gave him 2 rules. Oh, I hope I wrote those down. I'd be so mad if I didn't. And the 2 rules were, one was life isn't fair. Oh shit, what was the other one? Life isn't fair and nothing's free. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, so he said his mother taught him, life isn't fair and nothing's free. That's exactly what my mother taught me. Exactly. Life isn't fair, and if you didn't work for it, you didn't deserve it. Basically, nothing's free. If you unpack that, that's the entire theory of economics. I didn't even realize that until this morning. It's the entire theory of economics. Life isn't fair, nothing's free. If you just took that little seed and just say, all right, what does that mean? Like what does that imply? Free markets, capitalism. It's all there. The entire thing is there with just life isn't fair, nothing's free. Because what that told me to do in life is what? Find my advantage that other people didn't have. Why? Because life isn't fair. And my mother told me that specifically. Life isn't fair, go where it's unfair in your favor. So I went exactly where it was unfair in my favor, to college. Because I knew as a young white man in America during those years, if I went to college, I could pretty much own the world. And so I did. I just found my unfair advantage and I took it. Now, if you're black in America, what are you going to do? What's your unfair advantage? Do you have any? Yes, you do. Yeah, you have plenty. Unfair advantage number 1, you could get more funding to go to college. Now, I'm not ignoring all the disadvantages. We will stipulate that being black in America comes with a bag of disadvantages. But life is unfair. So find where you have an advantage. Go to any, get your college education that's more likely paid for than not. Go to any Fortune 500 company and apply for a job with your college education, and they will favor you over pretty much everybody. That's your advantage. You can just walk into any company and they'll hire you if you're qualified. I can't do that. Pretty much only black people in America can get any job they want if they're qualified. White people can't get any job they want if they're qualified. They can work in their field pretty much every time, right? Like if you've got some skills, you can work in that field. But if you're a black American, you can get close to 100% of jobs you apply for if you're qualified, because there's a preference. It's an unfair advantage at the moment that they should take advantage of. And have you ever heard me bitching that black people have that like little narrow advantage? Opposite. I recommend they take advantage of it. Because I'm doing it. If I find an advantage for myself, I'm going to be all over it. That's how the system works. If you find an advantage for yourself that I don't have, please exploit it. That's how my system works better. You exploit your advantage, I exploit my advantage. If it's legal, we exploit our advantages, and then the whole thing rises. That's how it works. Let me give you an example of how the participants did not understand economics. One proponent of reparations said, people don't understand that when you do something that helps black Americans, that everybody else does well too. So it's almost like it's free. Have you ever heard me say that? Have you ever heard me say that if you did reparations, it actually might be good for everybody? I have. So I've made that same point, that anything that helps black America helps everybody, right? Now, what's wrong with that? You see what's wrong with it? In the context of reparations, it's not yes or no reparations. That's not how you do economics. That's not how you do decision making. Here's how you do it, and this is something I learned, but maybe black Americans don't have access to the same mentoring or something. But here's what I learned. You have to make the right comparison. The comparison is not reparations yes or no. It's not like there's a bucket of money that sits there unspent if we don't do reparations. Reparations have to be compared to all other uses for money. You all knew that, right? The money is not earmarked. You know, the government collects taxes and they raise debt to pay for things, but they get to decide on all those things, and all of those things have to be weighed against all the other things. So if you're going to say reparations yes or no, that just shows you don't understand how anything works, because it's not even the right question. You can't get the right answer to the wrong question. That doesn't move you forward. Here's the right question. If you had, let's say reparations were going to cost, I don't know, what, $1 trillion or something? Just pick a number. The question is, what else could you use the $1 trillion for? And if the answer is giving money to everybody who is poor, or fixing all the schools for everybody, which would be better for the economy? Well, almost certainly it would be better to give 2 poor people extra help than it would be to give 1 poor black person some extra reparations and 1 rich black person some reparations. Am I wrong? If you found a poor, Chinese American and a poor black American, and they're both really poor, and you help those 2 people, don't you get more bang for your buck than if you helped 1 poor black person, poor black American, and 1 well-off black American? There's no question, right? So the people who are saying that helping black Americans helps everybody, therefore that's my analysis, that's just somebody who doesn't understand really basic economics. Here's something else that one of the speakers said. People are worried that it would cause inflation, but they don't understand that it won't. That printing money we don't have, $1 trillion, and giving it to black Americans won't cause inflation. Why? Because it would help the economic activity. So that would not hurt inflation. It would boost the economic activity, so you don't have to worry about inflation. Does anybody see a problem with that? Do you know where inflation comes from? It comes from every boost of economic activity. It comes from printing money and throwing it into the system, no matter where. It doesn't matter where you put the money. It's all inflationary. And so a gentleman argued that it wasn't inflationary by its nature. By its nature, it wasn't inflationary because it was good for the economy. Now, that is the least understanding of economics you could ever have. Now, it's not a reason not to do it. I'm not saying that you should not do it because of inflation. I'm saying you should at least understand it. Understand the interplay between putting money into the system and inflation. So, my experience was, and by the way, nobody pushed back that I heard. I didn't hear anybody raise their hand and say, just a correction, any money you put into the system is inflationary. There's no exception to that. Is there? Is there any exception to that? I mean, this wouldn't be one, but maybe there is. So there's part of me who believes that we don't have a racial and philosophical divide. We have a knowledge problem. And that people who have similar knowledge end up in the same place, where economics is involved. And you have this weird situation where Black America is practically screaming that they know they need personal finance and economic education. And they're asking for it to be included in schools and stuff. I'm totally on board with that. But don't you think that's one place where the Republicans can not only agree with Black Americans completely, but the more aggressively they help them get what they're asking for in that domain, the better off everybody's going to be. Am I wrong? What Republican is going to be worse off because Black Americans are, brought up to speed on finance? That's just all good, right? There's nothing bad about that in any way. Yeah. Teachers' unions are the problem. Once again, you were correct. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the conclusion of my exciting show. Was there anything I missed today? I feel like there was a story I missed. Milton Friedman. Yeah, Milton Friedman's sort of a challenging place to start. I wouldn't start anybody with Milton Friedman. I'm a fan, but I wouldn't start there. I'd start simpler. Handing out money to people for nothing never works. Well, here's the problem with never. Never makes sense when the environment is similar. But as we enter the AI singularity and the age of robots, we might have to rethink that giving money to somebody for nothing doesn't work. It might always be true. I'm open to the fact that there's nothing that could change that. But there might be no other alternative. There might just not be enough jobs, so we'll see. Subtract BLM riots from reparation debt. Well, yeah. Yeah, and here's the other thing. I've said this before. If you were going to calculate how much the reparations should be, how would you do that? Well, if you understood economics, and here's the problem again, you would compare to Nigeria, or you would compare to wherever in Africa the slaves were originally taken from. You would say, how is that local population doing compared to the people who had the misfortune of being slaves? And I think you would find that the descendants of the slaves are doing better than the descendants of the people who captured them. Probably the people who captured the slaves and sold them but stayed in Africa themselves, probably not doing so well. I don't know. Probably not. Supremacist. Somebody just called me a white supremacist. Okay, that's pretty clever. See, that's why I accept my inaccurate name, Claw Adams, because it's funny. As long as it's funny, I'm okay with it.